Thank you very much, Pete. That's great. So if you can raise your hands as I asked at the beginning. Nicolette.
Great. So, great thinking which has been going on. I really like the reframing of the mission around a much more an inclusive transition, and then seeing the familiar themes which we've had from the past. That framing, it made me wonder about your remark about needing to strengthen strategic partnerships. And then when you went on to explain what you meant by that, it seemed that largely it was increasing the geographic coverage of those partnerships, but still with the same sorts of partners. And which I'm sure we really must do. But I was also just wondering whether there's a case for actually broadening the types of partnership, particularly as our mission is now framed in this bigger framing of a certain, and knowledge is an important part of that transition, but it's not the only thing. So I was wondering whether strengthening and another reason why I'm asking this question is the observations you make about the foundation we're building for the 25 to 2030 period, when we want exponential growth and all leveraging all the sort of community connections. Yeah, I think my question is, shouldn't we be thinking more broadly than just increasing geographically? I think I'm thinking in terms of the strategic, we need to think more broadly. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mentioned local authorities only as an example. We've got very good partnership with Baines Council, not so strong, although it's good, but not as strong with South Gloss and Wiltshire. But you're absolutely right, it's much more wider than that. And some of the examples of that are within the private sector, so and the regulated sector, if you like. So distribution network operator, Western Power Distribution, we have a partnership with them. We need to build on that, make it a lot stronger. With the private sector, energy suppliers, we're not going to become a licensed supplier. We're not going to get into developing flexibility platforms. There's a lot out there in the market that we don't have the resources, skills, or even best well placed to do, but there are people out there that are doing it. So we need to think on innovation around the community model, and how can we build on partnerships that will enable us to kind of deliver wider. So absolutely private sector, regulated sector, and social sector as well. I mentioned housing associations. We've started developing really strong partnerships with parish and town councils. Nick's been doing some great work there. We need to do that more, and also within the wider community network. So we've got very good relationships with Families Against Climate, Families for Community Action. There's a whole range of environmental and climate-related community networks that we're very well linked into. But we need to do more about linking into the climate, into the non-environmental climate community networks as well, so that we can start talking to a wider range of the community, rather wider cross-section of the community. So you're absolutely right, Nicolette. There's much that we can do in expanding our strategic partnerships right across the piece. Yeah, and I was also just not driving the question is that this last year has seen an enormous increase in sort of businesses and also the social enterprise as well, but their climate ambitions and looking for sort of projects and things they can invest in to realise them. And so I just thought there's probably even more scope for expanding of organisations, and particularly you're looking for the purchasing power agreements and bigger organisations. If you were just to sort of look around and say, well, who's really big in our local area in terms of their ambition?
Yes.
Yeah, and
their calculations.
yeah, no, I think that's really helpful. Thanks, Nicolette. I mean, examples of that, the universities. We've got some good links with the universities that we're hoping to really expand. Large consumers, big estates, interested not just on building renewables on site, but also potentially buying electricity from local renewables, and also integrating education with students into that piece as well, and the potential to engage with a younger audience through that. I think there's some really exciting opportunities there that we're starting to explore with some of the larger consumers as well, who, as you say, Nicolette, are increasingly interested and focused on the kind of carbon targets. Great, thanks.
Any other questions? Pat, I'm not sure whether your hand is raised because you didn't take it down, or whether you do have a question.
No, it's not that, it's the hand.
Hello, sorry about that. Yes, I didn't take it down. You're absolutely
okay.
right. But I do have a question actually, but it's a fairly mundane one really. But at the moment, Pat and I'm Christine, by the way, hi everybody. We buy our electricity and gas, because we also consume gas, from Good Energy. And we would be, I think, very interested in buying our electricity from Bath and West Community Energy in the future when that's possible. I'm just thinking, can you source your energies from different, so you could do electricity with you and gas continue with Good Energy? I'm just asking that question, just thinking.
Yes.
My head.
We're some way from being able to sell you electricity directly from our projects. The pilot that we're doing, going to be doing, is going to simulate that, because from a regulatory point of view, we can't yet do it. But you can buy your electricity and gas from different people, so that's not a problem. You are buying your gas and electricity from a good source. Good Energy is one of the few energy suppliers that, when you think about green electricity, are actually doing the right thing and sourcing their green electricity from actual renewable energy projects, rather than just purchasing certificates in the market, which doesn't really add much value. So yeah, I wouldn't think about changing necessarily right now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll stay with them, and we're watching this space with great interest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim,
so we'll take that hand down, lower hand, gone.
Lovely.
Good.
Thanks. Thank you, Christine, and sorry for calling you Pat. Tim.
You're on mute, Tim.
Right, I'll press the spacer key, it seems to work. Hi, yeah, I'd like to know a little bit more what your thoughts are on the wholesale future prices of electricity. I'm totally confused in how important these may be, because I get my electricity from an outfit called Bulb that claims to be totally renewable. But they've twice this year put the prices up for electricity, although I think they've reduced gas. And I don't see how this sort of relates with, you know, the huge amount of offshore wind that's now coming on stream, you know, way below the wholesale prices we thought we would be getting about 2 years ago. So just a bit of a discussion really about the thoughts on future prices and how that might impact the plan.
Yeah, it's a really important question, Tim, and one that we agonize over at board level and in our finance subcommittee, because our projects are long-term projects. Even our feed-in tariff projects, we only have the feed-in tariff for 20 years. We expect our projects to last 30 years plus. The new projects that we're developing now don't have a feed-in tariff. So they have no long-term financial security beyond the way that we can sell the electricity. And if we don't have a power purchase agreement with either the building user, because we're selling the electricity direct to the building user, or to a large consumer over the grid, then we're having to sell electricity into the wholesale market. and then we have to think about that. So we look at industry standard forecasts for wholesale prices, which are produced by a range of organizations like Beringa, Poiri, Aurora, and try and get a balanced view of what those prices might look like. However, fundamentally, the problem is that there is a big investment gap that even these people who produce the forecasts say exists between the price forecasts that they're making and what will be required to actually generate the investment necessary to meet net zero. And that creates real problems for us because we're using their prices to justify or not our projects. And if they're not high enough, principally because they're not factoring in what some people expect to see increase in terms of the cost of carbon, the price of carbon, then we're looking at projects that are not as viable as they might otherwise be. So we're expecting wholesale prices to increase significantly over the next year or so, at least. And so you might well see further price increases in terms of your electricity supply. But in the medium to longer term, the view is that without a massive increase in carbon price, and there are different views in the market as to how big that price increase is going to be, that the expansion of renewables and exactly the point that you make about offshore wind and renewables from Europe, assuming that we still have access to the European internal energy market, is going to drive down wholesale prices, in which case we're facing a real challenge, which is why we place so much store on our ability to secure long-term power purchase agreements with consumers like our local authorities. Because without that, we're reliant on the wholesale price market, which creates real problems for us. That's a roundabout sort of answer, but I hope it kind of...
that's very useful. Thanks, Pete. It gives a bit of context to the whole thing. And next time my supplier tells me the price is going up again, I'll at least keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. I think Helen was next and then Bob.
Oh, hi, I tried to start my video. Oh, there I am. I don't know if this is relevant really, but I just wondered, because I find the whole market so complex, whether there is any role for BWCE in offering or in providing some service of advice to, general consumers, because it seems very, very hard to get independent advice or help. And I think a lot of people probably faced with similar problems.
Yeah, I have to say that, Helen, we increasingly are getting people just asking us for opinions on what people should do. And it's not surprising. We find the market complex, and we're kind of working in the sector. So how consumers that are trying to balance this as just a very small part of their day can manage, I don't know. So I fully expect that to be an issue. The question for us as a community business is, can we generate a service that can cover its costs? Because the last thing that we feel we should be doing is creating a grant-funded service that is dependent on grants to deliver. There are other people like Centre for Sustainable Energy that do that really, really well. So we should be signposting those sorts of advice services wherever we can. However, we are trying, and again, Nick has been increasing the amount of information. Sorry, that's Nick Bird. Can wave? Nick's our communications and community outreach guru, increasing the amount of information on our website so that people have an immediate first port of call about some of the issues that they might answer some of their questions. So I think where we can provide advice, and we hope to provide advice in the future, is where it impinges on specific aspects of the services that we hope to deliver, rather than a general kind of market advice, because I don't think we're the best people to do that.
Oh, thank you.
Can I just add, Joan, just to say, Beatrice said there's actually a document I've actually just drafted in the last few weeks, which is hopefully going to be put on the website quite soon, where I did collate, Pete mentioned Centre for Sustainable Energy, and various other organisations who offer loads of different types of advice around home energy. So whether you want to install a heat pump or you're looking for sort of how to insulate your home, etc. So I've pulled a number of resources together, and that will be, it's not on there yet, but it will be on there on the website quite soon, and I will alert people through the newsletter when that happens.
Thank you very much, Nick. So Bob next.
Unmute, yes. Can you hear me, Peter?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Good evening. Actually, I think you may have answered the question that I was going to ask.
Oh, wow.
So my comment really was I was encouraged to hear that you're looking at battery storage. And of course, I know about technically our ground-mounted projects. And I think technically that might be relatively easy to do technically, but I wonder how much difficulty there would be from a business perspective in looking at all the feed-in tariff and all that kind of stuff. So just a comment there that I think it would be probably more difficult from a business perspective than a technical perspective.
Mm. I think you're right, although because you looked at it, at co-location of battery storage on one of our projects, that there are technical issues around the grid connection in particular, for getting the level of import capacity that you need, and also matching up transformer kind of, so there are technical issues, as you know far better than I do. But you're right, from a business point of view, the work that we've done on battery storage at a domestic level tells us that the capital costs are too high at the moment to make something financially viable. We've done some high-level work on co-located battery storage, and particularly behind the meter storage. We did a feasibility study for Bath-Spa University, where we drew in some specialist consultancy advice around battery storage to look at that. And I think there are significant business challenges for us as a community business around making that stack up. And we, as the part of the latest feasibility study, we're on ground mount solar, we're integrating a bit of feasibility study work, which actually Fliss, who's on the call now, is actually helping us with, to look at co-located battery storage on some of our ground mount solar. And we fully expect the business issues to be the real problem. And it's about complexity of revenue stacks, the capital costs of the projects of the battery storage, and whether we can generate not just a financial return, but a financial return that matches our investment profile. So some people might do it because it's high risk, but also high reward. The kind of investment structure that we have, you all good folks tend to prefer kind of lower risk and accept lower return. That's not the kind of investment that currently battery storage looks like. So, but we hope that over time, and again, Fliss, you might want to comment, we hope that again, capital costs fall over the next coming years, that might become more of a viable option.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think my experience is that with battery storage, it's a question of risk profile rather than just the base case, and it's getting comfortable with that because it is a different profile from subsidy supported renewables. I suppose there's a question that kind of builds off that, which is given that commercial complexity, I mean, some of it can be outsourced, but some of it is kind of going to stay with Bath and West. Whether those skills are kind of in-house, and how we might have to develop some of the skill sets in that area to manage some of those commercial risks and kind of make informed decisions.
Yeah, really helpful point. Thanks, Fliss.
So Peter, could I ask my subsequent question as well?
Yeah.
Thank you. I've personally been looking at retrofitting heat pumps into a traditionally heated house. I've actually had some experience with a different house working with heat pumps, and clearly one of the issues is about insulation for an old property. Now looking around for advice on things like where can I go to locally in our area for trusted organisations who have the experience and can advise on, you know, what are the problems of trying to install cavity wall insulation, for example. Organisations that have all the necessary approvals. And it would be great if we could find a right company, work with a local company as well. So I just wonder whether that kind of advice is something that maybe Nick is thinking about adding to this document that he's going to publish soon.
Nick? Oh,
interesting. I'm here. Hello.
Oh.
Yeah. Don't know why my camera's gone off. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can hear you.
Interesting enough, as you're talking about, I was just going to send the draft to Helen to have a look at. But it is this sort of thing. I'm just flicking through: energy saving trust, central sustainable energy, micro generation certification scheme, etc. Listing who gives what advice, whether it is about insulation or whether it is about what do you need to go through before actually putting a heat pump in your home, etc. So these are the people who've done the work, and so the idea is we put more of this information on our website. So yeah, that's basically what I'm looking at, and I will add anything else to this once it's gone on the website. I'll update if I find anything else. I'm sure there's stuff I've missed off this. So when I do put it up, I'd want people to say, "Hey, what about these guys?"
Yeah, I'd always, if people are looking for energy efficiency advice, I'd always direct them first to Centre for Sustainable Energy. They've got an energy helpline. There's also in Baines Energy at Home, which used to be run by Centre for Sustainable Energy, but is now just a website. It has some information, but it's not as good as it was. So I'd go to CSE in their helpline. They've got access to installers, they've got knowledge of supply chain, and particularly have knowledge of the things that you need to be aware about when you look at cavity wall insulation, for example, mentioning the point that you flagged.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
No worries. Fliss, did you have your hand up?
It was an erroneous hand, sorry.
So any other questions?
Or comments? I mean, do you like it? Does it fill you with fear, thinking that, oh my gosh, this organization that I've been supporting is kind of going down a road that really worries me? Tell us what you think. Oh, that's good. Like to see the thumb up, Chris. Thank you.
I mean, I get. Oh, Nicolette, have you got another question or comment?
It was just a very quick comment. There was an awful lot to absorb, so that I'm holding back some of my reactions until I've actually had time to absorb it. But I think the overall framework and approach is impressive.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Nicolette.
We will be able to circulate the presentation, won't we, Pete? Yeah, circulate the presentation. And I mean, our AGM's on the 25th of September. I'd be expecting in September to be circulating the business plan, full document, 40 or 50 pages. So there'll be lots for you to get your teeth into, Nicolette. We won't at the AGM be looking to formally approve it by members, but we will be looking for kind of people's views and feedback and support for the general direction that we're going with it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think definitely support the general direction based on what I've seen today. Yeah, and I like the free scenarios approach, so that you're really registering that it's highly uncertain how certain things are going to turn out.
Great.
Anything else that people want to ask? Paul, you're looking as if you might have a question. I can see it bubbling behind your eyes. On mute.
Yeah, he's not now.
Yeah, I was going to ask Nick this afterwards, but I'll ask now. I'm going to ask a question that isn't technically difficult and relates to my sort of observations as I walk around Bath. And that is the question about rooftop capacity from the Bath building stock. And where are we with a data set that shows the potential rooftops that could be installed for solar electricity?
I might have to back the data set back to Pete, but that is the purpose of our community solar project. And actually, I'm going to do a little promotion now. Next Thursday, we've got a webinar targeting businesses to actually explain our community solar offer, because I think, as Pete has been saying, that it's about, we can only do it for rooftops of a certain size and buildings that generate a certain amount of need a certain amount of energy all year round, because we are selling the energy to the building cheaper than market rate. So it's a win-win all round. We've actually been promoting this to people like Bath Beard, the Invest in Bath sent it out to 3,500 members. We've still not got a massive amount of businesses on the webinar, so we'd like to get more. But part of the thing about promoting the webinar is just to try and get through to businesses. So if you've got any ideas how we can get through to them, that would be really useful. I think Bath Beard has sent our solar team a list sort of all the businesses and a map in the centre of Bath. So I think they're starting to plough through that. And we've just got a guy who's offered his time voluntary to help with that, because it's a big job, and we've got a guy who's really interested in getting into community energy. He's offered to do that, so he's going to start doing that probably in about a month's time. I don't know if you've got anything to add, Pete?
Well, just on the kind of big picture figures, you may have seen that in Bath and North East Somerset, they produced or got a company organisation consultancy called Anthesis to do a review of the resource within Baines. They reckoned that they could get 50% of the domestic buildings with solar on them over the next 10 years. I think that's incredibly ambitious. But if you were to tot up, we did a basic exercise a couple of years ago, and identifying just the roofs were big enough to cope with 100 kilowatt size projects, which is quite large. And we were looking at 30, 40 megawatts of solar very easily. And that's just scratching the surface. So there is a significant potential for rooftop solar. It's a question, though, that every single rooftop has a building owner that you've got to convince to sign on the dotted line. So there's a lot more involved in getting that amount of, so 1 megawatt of rooftop is a lot harder to get installed than 1 megawatt of ground mount solar or 1 megawatt of wind turbine, just because of the complexity of all of those building users. But it is the obvious place to start. And we're trying hard, as Nick says, to expand our work in that area. It would help if all new development had solar as a matter of course on it. All these buildings that are being built now, all the housing developments, still we're building housing that is not net zero. And so we're going to have to be renovating it in 5 to 10 years. It's just absolute madness. But it's the way government have framed the guidelines around sustainable construction. But it leaves us more to do from a community perspective. Okay, well,
thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Paul. And if you've got any ideas about links to businesses, I'd be really happy to hear them.
I've just put the event in the chat, the one that's happening next Thursday.
Okay.
Thanks, Nick.
Grand.
I wonder, Pete, whether we should move to the poll, because we have beginning to lose a few people, aren't we? And it would be nice to capture.
So it's a very simple one question poll that I'd like you to just comment on, asking you to select the option there that best represents your view on the following statement. I support BWC's goals, aspirations and direction as outlined in the meeting. From strongly agree to strongly disagree. Please give us your view. And this is just really kind of getting a sense of the room, so to speak. When we send out information, we'll give you an opportunity to just give us more comments. If there are specific things that you think we should include that we haven't covered. And of course, when the business plan itself goes around, there's a lot more chance to have a look at the detail. While this is going on, I will kind of distribute the results once everybody's kind of given their two pennyworth. Final chance to raise any questions, comments or concerns. Please don't feel inhibited to say, I'm worried about this or I don't understand that. Please do shout out. There are no silly questions or wrong things here. Does that mean, yeah. Nicolette, are you waving? You got a question?
Yeah, it's a sort of comment. We've had this last year. We've had very little contact with each other as an enterprise, and I'm just wondering, are other people feeling that sort of lack of social connection and working together as a community? It's a bit of a concern or a comment or.
I don't know whether other people heard that. Nicolette, you were kind of cutting in and out. For me, I don't know whether that was true of other people. So I think you were asking, how do people feel about the fact that everything is done via Zoom at the moment? And as a community organisation, we're not actually engaging at a community level. It's something that we feel quite kind of strongly, as you can imagine. There's only so many Zoom webinars we can all cope with. But what do other people think about that?
Maggie.
Yeah, I would just like to say that this is one of the better Zooms I've attended. Other Zooms, with an organisation that I won't mention, I come away feeling very depressed. And I understand that if it had been a meeting, we could be sort of, depressed in the meeting, but have a cup of tea afterwards. But this Zoom, I've always found it actually quite inspiring. I'd like to add that, yes, I think your plans for the future are fantastic. And I'm encouraged by that. However, are you not going to be taken over at some point? You're going to make such a success of it that someone's going to want to take you over?
A really interesting question. And it was one of the key reasons why we set ourselves up as a community benefit society. Our rules mean that we can't be asset stripped, if you like, for commercial gain. Yes. We can only pass our assets on to other organizations of a similar kind of setup, or sell them to commercial interests, but for adequate value, for market value. So the community benefit, if you like, that's generated by the assets stays within the business. So we can't be taken over. And that's one of the things that we've seen that has really helped promote what we're trying to do and encourage support for us as an organization, because it is a common concern that you raise, Maggie, that people have expressed.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add something to that, Pete? I think the other side of that, what's behind that question is, of course, we do collaborate with other similar types of organisations to BWCE. So, for example, our asset management is provided by a company that we and a few other similar social enterprises have all bought into. And we do talk to the likes of Bristol Energy Cooperative about working more closely with them. So it doesn't mean that we are not able to explore the opportunities of operating at a bigger scale, but we feel strongly that we want to retain our sense of identity and local ownership.
When you say bigger scale, do you mean geographically, or do you mean do you mean geographically, or in the sort of projects that you do locally, sort of in the areas which you've said earlier, but other projects even?
Both.
Or the latter. But Pete, you comment on that.
Well, I mean, one of the interesting things is, as community organisations, each of us are fairly small. We try and punch above our weight, but ultimately we're kind of small. But working together across the south, for the west of England, for example, we're hoping to build a more powerful voice for community energy with organisations in Bristol, North Somerset, and the like. So when talking to people like the West of England Combined Authorities, we can act with one voice and hopefully create more potential impact. But as Jane's saying, in the local area, we hope that we can work with other organisations to create a more scale in our own patch as well. So both, I think, is the answer, Maggie.
That's encouraging. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Jane, I just want to throw back to Nicolette's question. And as having had many meetings with Nicolette on our communications group, I think Zoom is a fantastic tool, and the ability to get people over distance in the same room. We've been doing some information sessions for our Flex community recently, and you just set it up, and that's great. And it doesn't matter if somebody's in, Midsummer Norton, you can do it. But as a community engagement person, I miss talking to people face to face. I'm desperate to do stalls and get the message out there. And I want to get us back to having some face-to-face meetings. And I think, if we can move forward with a really good mix of the two, that would be really great. And I'm also a person who uses my hands a lot, so it looks a bit weird on Zoom, so it's better if I'm standing in front of people. So that's what I've got to say.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, and furthermore, of course, we did need to take the decision about our AGM in September a couple of months ago. And obviously we, at that time, it wasn't really possible to contemplate an in-person meeting. And even now, I think, it's although everything is over, we are still going ahead with a Zoom AGM. Because that's the most expedient thing to do right now. But hopefully, not long later into the autumn and next year, then things will be very different. And we're very much looking forward to seeing you all in person.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I've shared the results of the poll. So great to see general support for the approach that we're taking. That's really encouraging. Thank you for that. And as I say, when Nick will send out feedback and circulate the slides, and we'll give you the opportunity to give any specific feedback as well, if you wish. So that would be great.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Pete. As always, excellent presentation and very much appreciated by everyone I know. I assume we'll also be sending out the presentation to those people who'd registered but weren't able to come.
Yeah.
That's all right. That's possible, isn't it, Nick?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm muted. Yes, absolutely. And we've had a couple of people on email who's apologised and said they'd like to see it.
Lovely. Okay. Well, lovely to see you all, and look forward to seeing you on the 25th of September. And if any of you know of any businesses who you think might be interested in the webinar next week, do please get in touch with Nick so that, and also obviously circulate the invitation which Nick has put in the chat. Because the more businesses we can encourage to participate, the better. Okay.
Great. Thanks very much, everybody. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.